All right, yeah, we'll kick off with this is taken from a tech. He posted a topic with kind of an interesting situation where he's like, I've got this dual evap refrigerator. This is the fresh food side, and he's seeing the fresh food evaporator frosted up like this. But he's saying, I've got 9 calls to do today. I've got 30 minutes that I have to do this, troubleshoot this call in. What would you guys recommend? What's the plan here? How do I get some good troubleshooting done in 30 minutes? Now, it's not ideal to have your calls scheduled like that because you can't always get like solid troubleshooting done in a strict 30 minutes. It's you're gonna be rushed, you're gonna start getting sloppy, but it's a good challenge. So let's see what you could feasibly do with smart troubleshooting techniques in 30 minutes. So dual evap, frosted up fresh food evaporator. I'll throw it to you guys first. What would be your first instinct of something to check that requires no disassembly at all? You can just
Temperature.
yeah, temperature. I mean, that's for any refrigerator problem. Check the temperatures, make sure your compartment temps are on par. If you got a frost up evaporator, you'd probably expect things to start getting a little warm in there, but that's a good thing to check. Another good thing to check would be if you have any air infiltration, right? Frosting up could be caused or at least contributed to if you got some significant air leak. Going to bring in moisture from the outside. That moisture will contact the evaporator and frost up. So check gaskets along the door. In this particular one, they also have these pressure relief valves underneath the crisper drawers that they actually tell specifically you should check these if they're stuck open in a case of excessive frosting for that evaporator. So that's a quick thing you can check. Would take you a couple of minutes. Check your various air infiltration points. See if that's the cause of the excessive frosting. If that's not the case, then you're getting to, okay, well, it seems like there's some problem with the defrost. How do we start troubleshooting that? Do you got to break out the steamer and defrost the evaporator and to get down to it and actually get to the components themselves to check this? Or is there another way that you could go about this, like a central location that you could go to? And that is exactly what you could do here. Right in the back of the machine compartment, you've got the main control board. So if you wanted to, I would say next thing to check would be the defrost thermistor. There's a thermistor right on the fresh food evaporator. That's going to tell the control how long to defrost for. And by the way, since this is a fresh food evaporator on this one, as they often do with these, this is just an air defrost. So we're not dealing with a defrost heater. It just shuts off the flow of refrigerant to this evaporator and just lets it sit like that for a bit, and that's how it's supposed to defrost. So it's important that makes the timing all the more important. We need to make really sure that the control is shutting off that evaporator for long enough to let it actually defrost all the way. Otherwise, you are just going to get that frost buildup. So if we want to check that thermistor, well, they've got a test for it right here. So I guess we don't even need to disassemble anything, actually. We could just use this test, right? And that'll tell us, it says right here, if the thermistor is pass or fail, right? So we can just run that test and it tells us if the thermistor is good, right?
Not really, because it
Wrong.
it won't call out a spec.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
As you can see from what it shows here, it even tells you kind of the a little dumbed down like algorithm that the board is using. It tells you what it's going to interpret as pass, short, or open. It just has some programmed in upper and lower temperature limit. And if the resistance it's reading from the thermistor is between those two parameters, it says, okay, thermistor's good. Doesn't matter if that actually accords with reality. The board has no way of telling if it accords with reality because the thermistor is how it measures temperature. So this test is pretty useless. Just, I wouldn't even bother with this. That's just going to waste some of your precious 30 minutes here. So yeah, if we do actually want to check this thermistor, you'd go back to the machine compartment and you can access your controls right there. So our control board right there back in the machine compartment. And here is they just call it a evap thermistor, but the only of the two evaporators, the only one with thermistor right on it is the fresh food one. So this is the fresh food evaporator thermistor. And right from P8 here, you can just check if that thermistor is in spec. Now, of course, to know it's in spec, you have to have specs to compare it to, and they give you like one temperature point in the tech sheet. Fortunately, I was able to dig up this chart, which gives you at least a few more points. I got this from that troubleshooter that they have for this model on Service Matters. Sometimes they hide away specs there that they don't include on the tech sheet or the manual, so that's where I clipped this from. So you just take a measurement of that thermistor, compare it to this table, see if it's in spec. Great. We're probably, if you're being quick about it, if you got this as a pre-formulated plan, probably about like 10 minutes in so far. with the time it took to slide out the refrigerator, take off the machine compartment. Next up, since we're talking about air defrost here, we need to make sure the evaporator fan is running because you need to have that air circulation going for it to properly defrost after they shut off the cooling to the evaporator. And so here's a test that's actually useful because you can just manually operate the evaporator fan. You can turn on both or just one or the other of the evaporator fans. Obviously, we're interested in the refrigerator compartment evaporator fan. So you turn that on and yet again, test it from the board. Easy question for you guys. What kind of fan motor is this? Just based off of
Brushless DC.
Field DC.
exactly. Yep. You've got your DC power supply, that's the VCC, DC ground, and then your pulse width modulated signal there. Pulse width modulated on this one, they give a spec of it should be somewhere, the maximum is 10 volts DC that they give as the spec for this. So you'd expect that somewhere between 1 and 10, probably somewhere in like the 4 to 5 range while it's running. But as long as it's anywhere within there, you're good. So yeah, check that that runs properly when you put it into test mode. Obviously, if you've got a problem with the evaporator fan, it's not going to do the air defrost properly. Last thing that you could check in your 30-minute troubleshoot here would be the three-way valve here, because obviously if it's not shutting off the refrigerant to that evaporator properly, you're never going to defrost. It's just going to keep cooling all the time. And if that's the case, you probably would also expect the customer to be complaining about excessive cooling in the refrigerator compartment. And there's kind of a quick and dirty test with this one where if we go back here, test 4 here will let you operate that valve and turn it to different positions. And every time it turns to a different position, if you just put your finger on the head of the valve here, you should feel from that solenoid in there, kind of a buzzing. If you do want to get some electrical measurements in there, there's also some specs for that. Again, tucked away in that troubleshooter on Service Matters. They interestingly, they have kind of a funny wattage test that they suggest for it here, where you hook up a watt meter to the power cord to the refrigerator, and then if it jumps up 3 to 4 watts every time you operate the three-way valve, then you know that the valve is operating. It's just funny that they include that test. It's kind of an unusual way to test that. It's also a very small amount of wattage, so it might be hard to notice on the meter, but you could try it. They also then give a resistance for the different coils in that three-way valve. So you've got they're just calling it a solenoid valve, but this is your three-way valve here. This middle one here on pin 3, it just tags off from the evaporator fan. That's just your DC power supply to the solenoid valve. And then these 4 are the other end of the different coils in there. So they would all be DC ground. But that means that across, so from 3 to each of these different terminals, you can measure the resistance of the coils and see that they're all in spec or not with this 39 to 49 ohm spec. So that's what they give us for specs for troubleshooting that three-way valve. So you can do the quick test, feel the vibration on the valve, and if you want to do an electrical test to check the coils are in spec, you got that.
Has anyone ever seen one of those fail in the field?
I don't think it's very common, and that's actually another important point that I should bring out here. If we're talking about troubleshooting within a time limit, you want to order your troubleshooting in order of most likely to least likely. So that's why I put the three-way valve last in our process, because you want to check the easy stuff first. That's why we check the air infiltration first before we disassemble anything. So yeah, that would be the end. Those would be like kind of the 4 steps that I would do if I'm just trying to do a quick, efficient troubleshoot of this. That doesn't require you sitting there, busting out the steamer and defrosting that panel to get to the evaporator and look at things. Honestly, getting to the evaporator wouldn't even help you that much here because sure, you could get right to that thermistor, but a lot of the things you want to troubleshoot are actually easier to access from the board than they would be from the evaporator itself.